In a Vox article from Constance Grady titled 20 Years After Aaliyah's Death, Her Story Only Feels More Tragic, Constance thoroughly details the way Aaliyah's illegitimate marriage to a 27-year-old R. Kelly put a stain on her legacy. Any sexual contact between Kelly and Aaliyah in 1994 would have been at the very least statutory rape. Yet even after the publication of their marriage certificate made it clear that something had happened between them, the media treated the story as at best an unconventional love story and at worst as a judgment on Aaliyah's so-called Lolita image. The little girl assuring a grown man that age ain't nothing but a number got what was coming to her. Often it treated the story simply as a sudsy celebrity scandal, a fun pop culture reference to break out and dish over. Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, a song written and produced by R. Kelly, was the title track for Aaliyah's debut studio album. Aaliyah was only 14 years old when she recorded the song, and R. Kelly was 27, 12 years her senior. The two were allegedly engaging in a romantic relationship at the time, and the song is meant to dismiss any criticism of this inappropriate age gap.
Everybody seems to think that y'all are either girlfriend or boyfriend, or cousins, or friends. let's just get the record straight.
I better go get me a white Jeep.
Age Ain't Nothing But a Number is a saying often used by older people who may have a history of dating people much younger than them. The idea is that love is love, and that when you're in love with someone, their age is inconsequential. In August of 1994, Aaliyah and R. Kelly had gotten married in a secret ceremony. A false ID was obtained for Aaliyah, listing her age as 18. The marriage was quickly annulled after Aaliyah's parents learned of the incident. When the story broke, most of the criticism was aimed at Aaliyah, a young teenager, and not R. Kelly, a grown adult. Kelly wrote Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, the song that created Aaliyah's beautiful pseudo-Lolita image in the first place. He dressed her for it and produced it, and the world was happy to give him credit when the song was a hit. Then the song became inextricably linked to a scandal, and responsibility for it somehow transferred to Aaliyah. On August 19, 2022, Demi Lovato released her album Holy Fuck. The album features a song called 29, which details a past relationship with an inappropriate age gap. Just 5 years a bleeder, student and a teacher. Far from innocent, what the fuck's consent? Numbers told you not to, but that didn't stop you. Student-teacher relationships have been romanticized in the media for decades, mainly in teen shows like infamously Pretty Little Liars, Riverdale, Beverly Hills 90210, Gossip Girl, and so many more. For years, these relationships were portrayed as aspirational and appealing rather than predatory and inappropriate. Only recently have we finally had more nuanced conversations around how harmful the betrayals of these types of relationships really are. Only recently have we had more discussions around grooming, which is an act or instance of engaging in behaviors or practices intended to gradually condition or emotionally manipulate a victim over time, as through friendship, gifts, flattery, etc., in order to entrap the person in a sexually abusive or predatory relationship. The discussions around grooming have finally added more nuance and complexity to the conversation around consent and how it's not as black and white as we've long believed. Demi Lovato revealed in her 2017 YouTube documentary, Simply Complicated, that she met Wilmer, an actor most known for the sitcom That 70s Show, when she was 17 and he was 29.
When I first met Wilmer, he was 29, but I was only 17. And so he was like, get away from me. After I had turned 18, we began dating.
The two dated on and off from 2010 to 2016. During those years, Demi was very open about her relationship with Wilmer in interviews.
He's amazing and super supportive.
What's interesting to me is that at the time, everyone seemed to love them together and no one really commented directly on the age gap. Demi's mom even said in one interview that she really liked them together.
Do you like them together?
I do like them together. I have to be honest. I do like them together. I'd be happy if they were together forever. But I don't know anything about a timeline or even if it's going to happen.
But the friendship is what I love most about their connection.
It's been in her life.
Yes,
yeah.
And they're amazing friends.
Demi was constantly gushing and blushing over Wilmer and was always talking about how happy he made her. In the Simply Complicated documentary, Demi says that Wilmer was her best relationship and that she didn't think she'd ever find someone else that would ever compare to him.
Like, I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to meet anybody that compares to him, but I'm trying to keep an open heart and an open mind when it comes to that.
That documentary came out in 2017, and 5 years later, Demi has now essentially denounced their relationship.
When I turned 29, I remember I was on vacation, and I just realized, like, I'm 29 now, and it put things into perspective. It put everything into perspective.
Now, for the record, Demi has not confirmed or denied that 29 is about Wilmer, but if you know anything about their relationship, you can kind of put two and two together. The way society views age gap relationships has slowly but surely evolved since the Clinton-Lewinsky days, when Monica Lewinsky, who was in her early 20s at the time of her affair with former President Clinton, bore the brunt of the fallout, while the president, who was in his late 40s, hardly faced any criticism for his behavior. Many people believe that because the age of consent is 18 in most states, that an 18-year-old couldn't possibly be taken advantage of by an older person. The way we as a society define what an adult is pretty hazy. Yes, legally you are an adult when you turn 18, but our brains don't even fully develop until the age of 25. Most of the privileges and responsibilities of adulthood are legally granted by the age of 18. That's when you can vote, enlist in the military, move out on your own. But is that the true age of maturity? A growing body of science says no. That critical parts of the brain involved in decision making are not fully developed until years later at age 25 or so. Many people also have a very narrow view of what sexual assault can entail. A TikToker who goes by The Real Tiffany shared a video in which she shares her story on being in a relationship with an older man when she was 17. Some of the comments under that video were, concerning? So it's like that after he left you, or did you know it was wrong from the start? My grandparents met when my grandmother was 17 and my grandfather was 24. They were married for nearly 50 years until my grandfather passed away. Many of our great-great-grandmothers got married at 14. If you're 17, you know how to make decisions on your own. Bruh, we learned to say no at the age of 4. It's funny how in that first comment I showed the person is questioning her if she knew it was wrong at the time. Her. The second and third comments I showed are doing the classic back in the old days bullshit. And then that last comment, the idea that we learn to say no at the age of 4 is such bullshit. Kids are taught from a young age to not cause a fuss and to be polite even in situations that make them uncomfortable. How many of us were forced to kiss the cheeks of family members we didn't really know because not doing so would be rude? At least that's what our parents told us. Sure, kids on some level are taught to say no, but most people have not been taught properly about consent. Most people never consider the way people can be groomed and manipulated into secretive and predatory relationships with older people, and how not all situations of sexual assault have to involve being kidnapped or violently assaulted in an alley by a stranger. Predatory behavior doesn't always look predatory to the person being preyed upon. Demi said the minute she laid eyes on Wilmer, she felt that she had to have him. She never once considered that maybe he was too old for her, and why would she? She was 17. People always seem to be more confused and disturbed by why these young girls would be so interested in a man twice their age, but never question why these men have a particular interest in these young women. We're so preoccupied with understanding the psychology of the victim and not the perpetrators.
If you're a young girl and you think that it's sexy or fun to date older men, it's not okay unless you're of age. It's portrayed as like, oh, you scored someone older, that's cool. And it's like, actually, that's weird.
Demi says that it's not okay to be in a relationship with someone who is significantly older than you and that it's weird. She's absolutely right. It is weird. But one thing I think is interesting here is that Demi is really only directly talking to young women, not the men. I'm not totally against relationships that have an age gap, to be clear. I think if the person is over 25, then I really don't care what people do with their lives. But I do find it a bit strange when people have a pattern of dating people who are much younger than them, especially dating people under the age of 25. Like Leonardo DiCaprio, who apparently only dates members of Gen Z. As some people probably know, Wilmer Valderrama also has a history of dating women much younger than him, such as Lindsay Lohan and Mandy Moore. I honestly don't find it weird that a young woman would be interested in dating an older man. When you're really young, you have this false imagination of what older people are like. You have this idea that being with an older man who is so mature and has their own job and their own money and their own car is cool and attractive. And when you're watching TV shows that glamorize these relationships, of course you're going to want that because the media is condoning it. You're young and easily impressed. You feel like you're definitely mature enough, or that you're grown for your age, or that you're an old soul.
I'm not shy to dating older men. And he was like, whoa, slow down. You're too young. And
well, you are too young.
Not anymore.
I love it. She is defensive. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
I'm 20-something.
I am 22.
How old is he?
He's 35. I'm basically 30.
Yeah, you're basically 30. Anyway, so
we're basically the same age.
Yeah.
I love how she says, I'm basically 30, as if to say, well, I'm basically a 30-year-old inside of a 22-year-old, so we're basically the same age. It's a way of trying to dismiss any red flags that other people might mention. Demi has even said that it was she, not he, who pursued the relationship.
Everyone thinks it's our 6-year anniversary. We met 6 years ago. But yeah, I knew I loved him when I met him. So he had some hesitations. Once I got older, it was then we could be together.
And that he was nervous about the age gap. A common way people choose to victim blame, particularly women who have been involved with much older men, is to say that, well, she pursued him, as a way to take any heat off of the older man. If it was she who pursued him, then you can't paint her older boyfriend as predatory or manipulative, right? I mean, what is a man to do if a beautiful young woman is coming on to him? I mean, it all goes back to Lolita. A story about a pedophile who sexually abuses and grooms a 12-year-old, but has long been misinterpreted as a tragic love story as explored in the Lolita Podcast by Demi Lovato. People often felt Lolita, or Dolores Hayes, which is her real name, was not in fact an innocent 12-year-old, but instead a seductress who essentially cast a spell on Humbert Humbert. When Aaliyah and R. Kelly illegally got married when she was 15 and he was 27, I think anyone at the time was alarmed or called out R. Kelly for what was clearly an absolutely disgusting and predatory relationship? I mean, you already know the answer to that question. What made this version of Aaliyah as a Lolita so attractive was that it offered her viewer an out. If there was something inherently seductive about Aaliyah's childishness, then it was not the viewer's fault if they found her sexy. She was the one who kept repeating that age ain't nothing but a number, even if she was only saying so because Kelly wrote the lyrics and told her to sing them. The subsequent shift of blame onto Aaliyah meant that the rest of the world could enjoy the spectacle of her sexuality without guilt. She had already taken on the guilt for the rest of the world. For years, the Black community continued to support R. Kelly and listen to his music, despite the well-known pattern he had of messing around with teenage girls. Black girls and women tend to be less believed when they experience sexual abuse or assault. A common criticism I heard of the women who came forward against R. Kelly in the Surviving R. Kelly documentary was that these women were fast and knew what they were doing. When referring to the infamous P tape, I've heard people refer to the girl who was victimized in the tape as willing. Now, to be clear, I am not trying to compare Wilmer Valderrama and Leonardo DiCaprio to R. Kelly or Humbert Humbert. Dating younger women and dating minors are two very different things. Pedophilia is a very particular thing, and that word is often misattributed to men who have had sexual relations with young women. Pedophilia is when someone is attracted to prepubescent children, and it's also very rare. The reason I am referencing Lolita is because all of these examples have one thing in common: victim blaming. Whether it's Dolores being depicted as a not-so-innocent seductress in almost every famous Lolita adaptation ever, or R. Kelly's victims being painted as willing, or Monica Lewinsky being blamed for bringing down the president, all of these women have been forced to bear the blame in situations where the men should have known better. Thought it was a teenage dream, just a fantasy. But was it yours or was it mine? 17, 29. Demi asked whose fantasy it was and who benefited more from this dynamic. The hypersexualization of teen girls in the media by older men is part of what contributes to the ways we as a society see them. Being adultified as a teenager is something that has been consistently imposed on many young pop stars like Britney Spears, causing young girls who idolize these pop stars to want to emulate them, their behavior, and the way they dress. Their hypersexualization is also what causes these young girls to be victimized and also blamed when they are pursued by older men. Something people usually say to defend men or just people in general who pursue much younger people, dismiss it by saying that they just have a preference, as if people aren't allowed to criticize your preferences. Listen, your preferences are not born from nothing. If you have a thing for big titties, it's not because your brain was wired that way. It's because women with big titties have always been hypersexualized and objectified in the media. If you have a preference for teenage girls when you yourself are not, you need to unpack that and try to understand why it is that you have such an attraction to such young and impressionable people. Saying it's just a preference is not enough. Aaliyah shouldn't have been violated or taken advantage of due to Robert Kelly's preferences. Something interesting about the Demi Wilmer situation is how often Demi would refer to him as her friend. Even in that interview with Demi's mom, she kept saying they were friends and have always been friends. She even hesitates when talking about their relationship timeline and is clearly worried about saying when exactly they started dating. It reminded me a little bit of how Aaliyah would lie about her age, and also in that interview I showed earlier, referred to Robert as her best friend.
At all. No, we're not. We're just very close. He's my best friend.
Yeah, cool.
Now, who found who? In the whole wide world. And for the record, you are how old? That's a secret. Women doesn't disclose her age.
In 2015, Wilmer did an interview with Ryan Seacrest where he told Ryan that he wanted nothing to do with her and that she was persistent.
How long have you been together? It's been a long time.
Well, we've been best friends for 5 years now, and we.
Were you friends first?
Yeah.
It was platonic first.
Yeah, for sure. I think she told you a little bit of that because I think I saw you guys' interview and. I wanted nothing to do with her.
You're like, not taking on you.
As if he was worried that people would think he was a creep for dating someone so young. Like, it's interesting how on some level these men know that dating these very young women is wrong. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been so cagey when answering questions about their relationship, but yet still pursued the relationship anyways. Demi said that turning 29 is what put everything in perspective for her. This is true of a lot of people's experiences. Getting older and looking back on certain relationships, seeing your faults, seeing theirs, and seeing that you were maybe naive and taken advantage of. I'm happy that Demi is owning their truth and putting this song out as a way to heal and to help others. People have already responded to the song with their own stories of grooming and assault. I think the sad part about all of this is the fact that Aaliyah will never have that moment. Aaliyah's innocence was taken away from her due to another man's sick fantasy. She'll never get to put out a song like 29 and will never get to call out the media for how poorly it handled the whole affair. The way the song ends, I think, is so important because it's Demi realizing that the fantasy was not hers, it was his. It was always his.